Alright, so let's dive into this hand. Okay, pre-flop, this is a very standard call. There's not much to talk about. With antes and durrrr small raise, I'm never folding this hand. Okay, so on the flop in this spot, we have two options. You can take the standard line and check raise now, or you can try to be sneaky and check call the flop in order to check raise the turn. I want to talk about why you would check call the flop sometimes with a strong hand. The reason is, if you check call the flop sometimes with a strong hand, then what you're doing is you're protecting your flop check calling range. If you always check raise with a strong hand and you never check call with a strong hand, then your turn range becomes inherently weaker, and good players will be able to capitalize by barreling turns whenever they see that you check call, because they know that your hand is weaker than average. That's going to put you into a lot of tough spots on later streets when you have marginal hands, and against a player like Tom here, you don't really want to put yourself in that position. In this case, I actually went ahead and I raised on the flop. I figured if Tom had a hand like middle set or bottom set, I didn't really want to risk having a scare card come on the turn and stifle my action against him, so I just went ahead and raised here. I guess I would be more likely to check call the flop if I had a hand like 2-2 or something like that, as opposed to 9-9. Okay, so on the turn, there's a little bit to talk about here. Now, our flop check raising range is weighted towards hands like 9-9, 8-8, maybe 9-8 with a straight draw, some wraps, and the times when we're just bluffing, we probably have a hand like Queen Jack or 10 Queen, you know, just like maybe like a gut shot, things like that. So what that means is, with the ace of clubs, that actually doesn't do too well for our range, except for whenever we have 9-9 or 8-8. The thing is, if we had like a hand like 9-8 with a straight draw, we're kind of in a tough spot, because if we bet out and we get jammed on, then our equity is pretty bad against any of the made hands that would jam here. The wraps that we have lose a ton of equity, because unless the wrap has a club draw to go with it as well, the wrap loses a ton of equity. So if I had either a 9-8 with a straight draw or a wrap, I would probably elect to check and hope that Tom checks it back. Otherwise, if I check and he bets, I'd probably end up having the call. The thing is, I decided to bet out here because I blocked the 9 pretty well. So I felt like it was more likely that he actually had a draw, and if Tom had a draw in this spot, he'd be likely to check it back and take his free card. So I went ahead and bet for him. This river spot is actually pretty intriguing as well, and the reason for that is because two draws hit, the 10 Jack straight draw and also the club draw. Let's talk first about Tom's turn calling range. I think his calling range is weighted towards hands like 2 pair, probably some wraps, and maybe some weaker hands that picked up clubs, maybe like a pair with clubs or something like that. So we have 3 options here. We can either check call, we can bet about 34,000, 35,000, or we can bet maybe like 15 or 16,000. So those are our 3 options, and in order to decide what we should do, we have to ask ourselves, how likely is it that Tom is going to bluff here? Also, how likely is it that he's going to value bet 10 Jack here, for instance, for thin value? And another question is, how likely is he to call with a bluff catcher? If we think he's very likely to bluff, that would also mean that he would value bet thinly, namely the 10 Jack straight, then our play is going to be to check call. If we think Tom will likely call off with most of his 2 pair combos, then we can bet 34,000, 35,000. If we think that he'll call with some 2 pairs but fold a lot of others, then maybe we can bet 16,000. And I guess that really just depends on how much of a station we think Tom is. I picked the check call here, and I got lucky that he actually was in a spot where he almost had to bluff, so it worked out for me.